Hi guys.
Hi, teacher. Good evening.
Hi, teacher. Good evening.
There. Okay. All right, guys. So please remember your cameras need to be on. Make sure you turn them on before we start. Okay. Well, anyhow, today we're actually gonna be we're gonna continue with the same speaking section, but we'll get started with a new task. So we have seen task 2 yesterday, which was about the campus announcement, college life. And here we're gonna be looking at task, which it's gonna be a bit different from now on because the last two tasks, task 3 and 4, are both gonna be academic from now on, which means you may have some new words, you may have some expressions you're not so familiarized with, but it's still not gonna be that complicated. Now here's what you will have to do in this task. First thing, you will read a short article, something like this, and you will be given 50 seconds to do that, to read the article. Then later you'll have to listen to a lecture, which, as we were saying, a lecture is just a college class where a professor explains a topic. So you will listen to the lecture, and finally you get the question. And then you get 30 seconds to prepare and 1 minute or 60 seconds to speak and answer the question. So once again, you read the article for 50 seconds, you listen to the lecture, then you get the question, 30 seconds to prepare and 1 minute to speak. And you need to summarize everything, both the reading and the listening in the question, in your response. Okay. So any questions so far about the structure? Is this okay? Okay, guys. Now, the good thing though is that we do know what topics you can find. And chances are you will have one of these three. So it's usually going to be psychology, biology, or business topics. Now, of course, there has been some questions that are about art or history, literature, what have you, but that's not that common. So to be honest, I would say that you're more likely going to get one of these three. So it's either psychology, biology, or business. Now, psychology, I would say, is quite easy to understand. It has some usual vocabulary. It's mainly about our mind, how our brain works, how our memory works, how we process experiences, we process emotions, pain, how we learn, that kind of thing. Biology tends to be about animals and plants. It's rarely about human biology. And it's about how they are organized, their life processes. Adaptations is something that I've seen. So maybe how certain animals adapt to changes in climate, maybe how they avoid predators, how they catch their prey, that kind of thing. And then you have business, which is also quite understandable if you have some business vocabulary. And business is usually about marketing strategies, advertising techniques, human resources, customer service, that kind of business. Okay. So any questions so far about the topics? Okay, then. Now let's take a look at what exactly you will be doing. You will have to do. So hold on. Okay. So here's how the reading will look like. You will have a title at the top of the text, and then the text, which is not that long. Now, what you need to do when you're reading, first thing you need to remember is that you always need to look at the title and take notes on it. You know that you have 50 seconds to read this, so you do have some time to take notes, but obviously you cannot take notes on everything. So the first important thing that you need to remember is the title, because it's not going to be just a summary or some kind of idea of what the text is about. In this case, it's even more important than in every single task, because the topic is going to tell you what the because the title is going to tell you what the topic is, what the key term or the key concept that you need to remember is. So you're actually going to have to mention this in your response, which is why you need to make sure that you remember it or that you're taking notes on what it is. And I have to read this. Now, when you're reading, and I want to be real clear on this, there's just one thing that you care about. There's just one thing that's important that matters here. And that is the definition of this topic. So you really don't care about anything but the definition of it, of the topic. You will have it, it's gonna be there somewhere within the text. And that's the only thing that you're actually gonna use in your response. So you really don't want to, pay attention to any details that you may have or any examples or further explanations. The only thing that you're really looking for when you're reading is figure out what this means. So you need to find out what target marketing or whatever the topic is means or how it's defined. Okay, so we're gonna try and do that. Now, does anybody care to read this? Will anyone please read?
I can do it.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. Bye.
Okay. Target marketing. Advertisers in the past have used radio and television in an attempt to provide information about their products to large general audience. It was once though that it was once thought that the best way to sell a product was to advertise it to as many people as possible. However, more recent trends in advertising have turned toward target marketing. Target marketing is the strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audience that have been determined to have the greatest need or desire for the product being marketed. Target marketing has proved to be very effective in reaching potential customers.
Okay, thank you so much. So that's it, you guys. Now, what do you say? What would you say the definition of target marketing is? Can anybody maybe define it?
Target marketing is a strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audiences.
Perfect. That's it. There you go. So the strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audiences. Great. So that's it. That's the only line that you're going to use. Everything else is a bit more explained, a bit more detailed, but you don't really care about what was used in the past or maybe whether it has been successful or effective or not. You just care about the definition that you have. So strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audiences. I'm terribly sorry, guys. I don't know what's wrong, but it's always at this exact time that the connection goes. Okay, so what I was saying is definition could be anywhere. Sometimes you have some red flags that are gonna help you find it. So let me show you. So in this case, it's quite clear, right? Target marketing is. So sometimes it could be a bit hard to identify it. So pay attention to any of those red flags, like maybe, I don't know, let's see. So perhaps, I don't know. So this kind of mental discomfort is known as cognitive dissonance. So it's known as, is defined as, or described as, or explained, or called, or psychologists call this. So try to look for those. But the thing is that that's what you need to do here. Take notes on the title, which is the topic, and you find the definition. Is that okay then? Do you have any questions about this? Okay. As I was saying, the next thing you do is you listen to the lecture. And now this lecture here is gonna be just a further explanation on the same topic. So it's still about the same topic, but the thing is that the professor will give you one or two real world examples. So you will be able to see how target marketing happens in real life, how it's used, how it, I don't know, how it is seen in real life. So some real world examples of how that happens in action, you know? So that's what you will have in the lecture, real world examples of the concept. Now, according to the topic that you have, you may have one or two examples. So if you have psychology, for instance, you will always have just one example, which is going to be like a story. It could be something from the professor's own experience, maybe something that happened to him or maybe something that he has seen, or a friend of his, or it could also be like a more general example, something that happens in general to a specific group of people, maybe to kids, or in schools, or maybe in, I don't know, with business people. Or sometimes you also have experiments. So maybe you put two groups of people, one of them is going to do this, the other one is going to do that. So that's when you have one example and it's a psychology topic. Now, when you have biology, tends to have two examples. So it's probably going to be two animals or two types of plants that do that certain thing. So let's say we're talking about camouflage. So you're going to have the examples of two animals that have that ability, or I don't know, something like that. And if you have business, I couldn't tell you, you could have one or two. It depends. So sometimes you have maybe two types of strategies or two products, two companies that are doing something, or just one. So those are your options, okay? So if you have psychology, it's always one example, a story, an experiment. If you have biology, it's always two. And if you have business, it could be one or two. So is that okay? Or we move on? All right. So what we're gonna be doing now, we're gonna listen to the lecture of this topic. And remember, you're gonna be looking for real world examples on how target marketing works. So you're looking for, I don't know, some certain company advertising some certain product to a very specific audience. So you need to find what those elements are. Please make sure to take some notes. Okay, so I'm gonna play the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a marketing class.
Nowadays, something you notice more and more is television commercials that are made specifically for certain television programs. So, let's say a company wants to sell a telephone, a cell phone. Now, during TV shows that young people watch, shows with pop music or teen serials, they create a commercial that emphasizes how fun the phone is. The phone has bright colors, and they show kids having a good time with their friends. And, well, the company wants the kids watching TV at this time to want to buy this phone that's made especially for them. But the same company will make a different commercial to be shown during, say, a program about business or a business news show. Now, for this group of people, business people, the company will have to show how efficient their phone is, how it can handle all business easily, and maybe even save money. And here's the thing. It's basically the same phone. The company has just made two different commercials to appeal to different groups of people.
Using the professor's examples, explain the advertising technique of target marketing.
All right, guys, that was the lecture. Now let's discuss. Okay. So here's a transcript actually, but we're going to try to talk about what it was about. Now, can anyone tell me what the lecture was about? What was the example about? Yes, Ale, go ahead.
The first example was talking about a kids show, and the second example speaks about business and also a business show. Yes, a business show. I think they talk about how they get target using, for example, for kids, the colors, the fan, and all things that could I don't know how to say, to attract kids with bright colors and that things. And the same company make another commercial and talking about handle economics, or maybe make some money, save money, and yes, I think it was that.
Okay, nice. So yes, that's great. That's true. So hold on. Okay, so we have, I would say it's one example with two parts. So we're talking, remember, about target marketing, right? Understanding the definition, I would say, is key to then understanding the lecture. If you got the definition right, you're more likely to understand better the example and explain it better as well, because you're going to focus on just how the example illustrates this idea. So how is it that we see with the example target marketing? So people advertising to smaller audiences. So we have a company that wants to sell a cell phone, and they do two TV shows, right? First, if they want to advertise it to young people, to kids, they're gonna make a commercial that emphasizes how fun the phone is. So the colors, the people having a good time and everything. On the other hand, if they want to advertise it to business people, so that's their target audience, they're gonna do the opposite. They're gonna emphasize how efficient the phone is, or how it can save money, handle business, that stuff. And they're gonna put the commercial at a time where business people watch TV, right? So when a program about business is airing, and the same with young people, they're gonna put the commercial when kids are watching TV. So when you have TV shows about pop music or teen TV shows, whatever. So those are the two examples. So we have the same company advertising the same cell phone to two different target audiences, young people and business people. So how fun the phone is versus how efficient it is. And that's exactly showing this, it's totally related. It has everything to do with target marketing because the company is advertising to a very specific group of people. It's either business people or young people, and they are having a strategy, right? They're doing a very specific commercial for each group of people. So that's it. That's with the example. Now, when you're explaining this in your response, you really want to try to narrow it down a bit and focus on those important elements. You can mention some, one or two details, but try not to go too into depth with them. Okay, so like, I don't know, so pop music or teen serials or bright colors, kids having a good time. So that kind of thing, those are details that are not that relevant. You could mention one or two, but try to make sure that at least you have all those important elements, right? So how the company is advertising the cell phone to the two groups of people. So yes, do you have any questions about this lecture that we listened to? As you can see, when you have business, the format that they're using or the register is quite casual, they have like, or and well. So let's say, so it's quite easy to understand the vocabulary and everything. Of course, it would be nice if you can have some business vocabulary. So instead of saying maybe groups of people, you say audience. Instead of saying, I don't know, show, you say advertise. So it's good to have that vocabulary. Now, any questions so far? Okay. Now, what you have to do in your response is this. So first thing, let's take a look at the question. The question here says, using the professor's examples, explain the advertising technique of target marketing. So as you can see, it's not quite like the other ones. It isn't exactly summarize the reading, then summarize the lecture. They want you to connect ideas. They want you to explain target marketing using the examples that the professor gave. So you really need to show the relationship between the two of them. You need to show how the example illustrates the concept. So that's what we're going to do here. First thing, as always, you need a short introduction in which you need to summarize the reading, but not just summarize it. I would say you just need to state what the definition of the topic is. So define the topic. You can say something like, according to the reading passage, target marketing is the strategy of advertising to specific small audiences. Okay, so that's it. That's your introduction. It should be at most 15 seconds, but not more than that. So according to the reading passage, target marketing is a strategy of advertising to specific audiences. And then as quickly as you can, you move on to the lecture, and then you just summarize the example. So in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept with the example of a company that wants to advertise a cell phone. They will do two commercials to sell it to two different groups of people. First, if you have two examples, you can use transitions. So to start, or first, if they want to, I don't know, if their target audience is young people, they will create a commercial emphasizing how fun the phone is and, I don't know, air it when kids are watching TV. And then on the other hand, if they want to sell it to an older audience, to maybe business people, then they will air the commercial at a time when business people are watching TV. So maybe when a news program is airing. And they will try to emphasize how efficient the phone is during the commercial. Okay? So that's it. You have the intro, the topic, the definition, and then you move on to the exam. Okay? You don't need a conclusion, and unless you have extra time, you don't have to do it. Now, if you have some extra time and you don't know what to say, then you can do something like, in short, I don't know, that's how the professor demonstrates this concept. Or that's how, by using the example of this advertisement, the professor demonstrates the strategy of target marketing, okay? So only if you have extra time, you can have this conclusion. But if not, that's totally fine. You don't need one, okay? So is everything okay? Is this clear? Do you know what I mean? Does it make sense? You have the intro, topic, definition, and then exam. Any questions? Okay, guys. So then maybe is there anyone who would like to try with this same example we just did? Just to have a sample. We have already discussed what it was about, so you guys just need to put everything together and come up with the response. So will anybody want to do that? Maybe, I don't know, let's say Camila, would you mind?
Yes,
Okay. So please go now.
according to the reading passage, target marketing is the strategy of advertising to a smaller, very specific audience. In the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept with example of TV shows which target marketing is young people, and that phones is made especially for them because they're fun and bright. In the other hand, the TV shows that which target marketing is for business people, and it shows how the phone is efficient, and it could be handled easily for business people. It's the same phone for two different group of people.
Okay, nice. And I like the closing idea too. It's the same phone for two different audiences. Nice. So nothing to say. You took exactly, I would say 15 seconds in the intro. You had the right definition. Moved on to the lecture. You summarized the examples. You didn't focus too much on the details. Had the right vocabulary. Used transitions. So well done. Wouldn't really change anything.
Thank you, teacher.
Okay, Cami, thank you. So, okay, do you have any questions before we start to practice? Nope. All right. So let me see. Okay, we're gonna do psychology one. Okay, so here's the reading, guys. Remember, you're looking for the topic and its definition. You'll have 50 seconds to read this. Okay, now let's listen to the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture about this topic in a sociology class.
This is a true story from my own life. In my first year in high school, I was addicted to video games. I played them all the time, and I wasn't studying enough. I was failing chemistry. That was my hardest class. So this was a conflict for me because I wanted a good job when I grew up, and I knew that if you want a good career, you got to do well in school. But I just couldn't give up video games. I was completely torn. And my solution was to change my perspective. See, the only class I was doing really badly in was chemistry. In the others, I was okay. So I asked myself if I wanted to be a chemist when I grew up. And the fact is, I didn't. I was pretty sure I wanted to be a sociologist. So I told myself my chemistry class didn't matter, because sociologists don't really need to know chemistry. In other words, I changed my understanding of what it meant to do well in school. I reinterpreted my situation. I used to think that doing well in school meant doing well in all my classes. But now I decided that succeeding in school meant only doing well in the classes that related directly to my future career. I eliminated the conflict, at least in my mind.
Using the example discussed by the professor, explain what cognitive dissonance is and how people often deal with it.
Okay, guys. So now you all will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, guys. So anyone wants to try? Anyone would like to give your first try? No?
I want to try, teacher.
Okay, of course, Ale. Thank you. You may start.
Okay, thank you. According to the reading passages, cognitive dissonance occur in a contradiction between actions and beliefs. People experiences cognitive dissonance often do not want to change the way they are acting. A professor illustrates an example about when they was a kid, they were addicted to video games, and they was bad in chemistry subject, and the solution was change the perspective they had about understanding school subjects. They say that in chemistry is not too much important for their future because they want to study sociology. So this subject was not important anymore, and they focus only in subject that they consider important to him, and that was they illustrate an cognitive dissonance attitude.
Okay, nice. Well done. So you went over a bit of time, you were missing some, but I think I really liked your response. So first thing, your definition was correct. It occurs when you have this contradiction between your actions and your beliefs. Try to leave it there, okay? Don't add more because it may take some of your time. So that thing about not wanting to change the way you're acting, it is true, but you're gonna demonstrate that with the example. Right now, just focus on the definition. So it occurs when your actions don't match your beliefs. and then you move on to the example as quickly as possible. And also, I like that the fact that in your example, you focused on that part of the conflict, right? So he had a conflict between what he knew, what he thought, which is he needed to do well in school if he wanted to have a successful career, and what he was doing, right? Because he was addicted to video games, and that was, damaging or hurting his grades. So what did he do? He solved the conflict, and you explain how he solved it, the solution he gave. So that's great. I like that you focus on that. You always can, try to relate a bit more maybe. So by using those words, so he solved the conflict or this cognitive dissonance that he was experiencing, maybe some words like this.
Okay.
And
Yes.
one more thing I would say about grammar, careful with the pronouns, okay? So this is a tip for everyone. Whenever you hear, if it's a female or a male professor, maybe you can write down the pronoun in big letters in your notes, so he or she, so that you can keep using it throughout all your response. Okay? In this case, it was a he. So careful with those.
Ah, yes, you're right, teacher. Thank you so much.
Well done. That was a really good one. Good first try. Okay, guys. Anybody else would like to try this one, or you want me to go with another one? Want to take a look at a different task? Or we can do one more try. Maybe, I don't know. Orlando, you there?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Okay. So would you like to try?
Yes, I could try.
Okay, perfect. You may go.
May I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, according to the reading passage, cognitive dissonance is a mental discomfort. People change their interpretation, minimizing the contradiction between what they do and what they should do. So in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept with the example of a man who couldn't give up video games, and eventually he decided to change his perspective and his understanding. Like he only be good at the subjects that were only affecting directly to his future career. For example, he gives chemistry as a non-matter subject, while sociologists did really matter for him. So in short, that's how the professor demonstrates this topic.
Okay. Well done, nice. So good definition. You moved on to the example real quick. You have really good grammar. Maybe we can add some transitions, especially when you have this sequence of events, So first, he wanted to do well in school. However, he was addicted to video games. Therefore, he was experiencing a conflict. Okay, so we can try to use them. But generally, speaking, I like the way you summarize the example. Don't forget to give a bit of context. I think you talked more about how he solved the conflict by reinterpreting the situation. But it's also important to mention what the conflict was initially, right? So he was experiencing a conflict because between what he thought he should be doing and what he was actually doing. And then you just explain how he solved the conflict. So maybe that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys. Any questions before we do another one? All right, so let's take a look at maybe Okay, this one here. Okay, so here's the reading part. You guys will have 50 seconds to read. Okay.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class.
Consider this experiment. Two groups of people were asked to watch TV, and while they were watching, a picture flashed on the screen. Less than a second, very quickly, so it was barely noticeable. The picture was of a boy with a birthday cake. Now, like I said, there were two groups, and each group saw a slightly different version of the picture. One group got the boy looking angry. In fact, he was actually throwing the cake on the floor. The other group got a picture of the boy smiling, happy, holding out the cake like he was offering it. Same boy, same cake, but different emotions expressed in each picture. Everyone was then asked to look at a different image. Now, this is a third image, right? Again, it's the boy and the cake, but this time the image stayed on the screen. In this picture, the boy's just holding the cake, basically no emotion on his face, everything very neutral. Now remember, nobody knew they'd already seen a picture of this boy. After a minute, everyone was asked to describe the boy's personality. Those who'd been exposed to the image of the angry boy, they generally described the boy's personality negatively. Those who'd earlier seen the happy boy described him, well, positively.
Describe what subliminal perception is and explain how the experiment discussed by the professor illustrates this phenomenon.
30 seconds. Okay, guys. So, who wants to go? Yes, Milenka?
Okay, thank you, teacher. I would like to try.
Okay, perfect. You may go.
Okay. According to the reading passage, subliminal perception is a perception of a stimulus without our awareness. In the lecture, the professor further illustrates two groups of people. Two groups of people. The first group is a group of people that watch an image where they see a boy throwing a cake. He's looking angry. And the second group is they watch an image where a boy is holding a cake. but they they asseverate that the boy is smiling. So this is an example where we can perceive different points of view.
Okay. Very nice. I like if you were trying to do that closing idea, you can just try to repeat the definition. So this is an example of how we can perceive certain images or certain stimuli without even realizing we're doing it, you know? So that's what happened with the two groups of people. I mean, that image that they saw for a flash for a second affected them, even if they didn't, if they were unconscious about it. So, okay. Great definition, the perception of a stimuli without that awareness, quick and sweet. And then you moved on. Maybe with the thing is that we don't have that much time. I'm sure that if you had had like more time, you probably would have explained it, have time to explain the whole example. But since you don't have that much time, try to just summarize it and go to that part, how the two groups of people saw this image for a second. One, the boy was angry and the other one was smiling. And when they were asked to describe the boy later, the first group described him positively and then the second one negative, right? Which means that they did see the image, even if they weren't aware of that. Okay? Try to summarize it a bit more.
Okay, teacher.
Okay, guys, so any questions before we go about the task or anything or
I have
comments?
a question.
Yes or no?
For example, when the professor is giving the lecture, what happens if I cannot understand like the whole lecture, but I did understand some part of it? Like for example, it happens with this lecture. I did understand that there were two groups, there were two images, but then a third image appeared and they were like asked to describe the personality, but I didn't understand the whole lecture, only by parts. What can we do in that situation?
Okay, that's a great question. So actually, if that ever happens, your plan, I mean, what you can do is try to use what you have. I think that, for example, what you're describing right now, it will be more than enough. Obviously, you're not gonna describe the example step by step in detail, but you can generally refer to it. So you can say in the lecture, the professor illustrates this concept with the example of an experiment, because you know it's an experiment. Of an experiment, you know that there are two groups of people. So of an experiment with two groups of people and two images that they were shown, and then describe the third image. And then you can try to just talk more about the reading. So you're gonna say, so what you do know, so you're gonna connect it. You're gonna say, so this experiment showed how these two groups of people were able to perceive the stimuli even if they weren't aware or in an unconscious way. So that's how subliminal perception worked for them, or that's how this experiment shows how we can perceive this or that. So you're gonna try to talk more about the reading and just briefly mention what it was about in general. I don't know if it makes sense, but try to use whatever you have. And if you don't know that much how exactly the experiment was, just acknowledge that there was an experiment that has shown this, because that's what you do know. You know that that experiment needs to be related or needs to be proving this concept. So you can talk about that, more about the reading and trying to kind of connect it with what you have from the listening. You don't necessarily need to explain step by step, as long as you generally, with general terms, explain it's an experiment, two groups of people describing an image, then that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Any other question? Okay, well. Then please don't forget to fill out the survey before you go. I'll be seeing you next week. Remember, tomorrow you have practice session with Jasmani, and you'll also have class on Monday to make up for the class we missed. We missed on Tuesday, right? The holiday.
Okay, thank you so much, teacher. Good night.
Thank you, teacher. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good teacher, good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, teacher. Good night.
Good night.